The last time we got a firmware update for the Canon EOS R5 Mark II was all the way back in March, with promises that a big update was to follow. Well, you don't have to wait any longer. Canon is about to release a firmware update for the R5 II, the R1, and many other cameras. The only question is, and this update has some big support, but is it the big update that we've been expecting? Well, I've got answers to all these questions, but first, please punch that subscribe button. It takes just a second and it means an awful lot to us. It's totally free and it's greatly appreciated. Hi, I'm Simon, your friendly photographic correspondent that likes to troll through the rumor mill and news sites so that, well, you don't have to. The weather is finally starting to cool off, thank God, but thanks to an expected firmware update, things are about to heat up for Canon EOS R5 Mark II and R1 owners. But the R5 II and the R1 aren't alone. Canon will be providing a firmware update for the R3, the R5, the R6 Mark II, the R7, R8, R10, R50, R50V, the C400, C80, C70, R5C, XF605, PowerShot V1, and V10. At least in terms of the number of cameras getting an update, this has got to be one of the biggest updates that I've ever covered. Stills hybrid cameras, cinema cameras, point and shoots, well, pretty well everybody, well, almost everybody, EOS R and RV. I said that wrong. EOS R and RP, not RV. See, the new EOS RV starting to really work on me. So when is this firmware update going to drop? Well, depending on what time you're watching this, it might already have started to trickle out. You see, the date for the release of this firmware update is July the 17th, and that's across the world, with Asia getting it before everybody else. So if you're in North America, it's probably already out there right now. In the UK, it's probably out there. And of course, if you're in Asia, well, if it's not 10 o'clock in the morning yet, you should have this firmware update. So let's get right to the meat of the matter. Is this a big update? We heard an awful lot in the first quarter, Canon rumors telling us that we were going to get a big update, but they also mentioned, to be fair, that there was a lot of rumored updates that this firmware update would be providing us with. Well, they were rumors, so let's just say it depends on which camera that you have, but it's safe to say that the R5 II, as I kind of alluded to a little bit earlier, will get the best bits, starting with C2PA. The firmware update adds C2PA format information to images at the time of capture, enabling verification of image authenticity in digital content. And this is something we've been hearing about for some time. One of the main reasons for that is, well, Sony's been beating the drum saying, look, we have this. Leica has it as well, with Nikon promising an update relatively soon, and the Z6 III, the Z9, and the Z8 should all get this. Now, other updates. The R1 is also getting, or I should say the R1 is getting, the advanced panning assist function already found in the R3, which Canon says optimizes smooth tracking for fast-moving subjects. And that's a good thing, but it's not the only autofocus update. And look, we talked a lot about this in the spring. Remember some of those issues that I was having? Well, a lot of the wildlife isn't around, but I've been traveling to Vancouver, and I gotta tell you, the 100 to 500 millimeter here with the R5 II, I haven't had a single issue with it. And I shot over a terabyte of 4K fine content. No issues did I have. And I'm beginning to wonder, because we had some people saying they had some issues at certain temperatures, like just above 0 degrees Celsius to about 10 degrees Celsius. And since things have warmed up, I haven't had any issues at all. So in terms of the autofocus update, well, I'm going to talk about bug fixes in just a moment. And I do have a warning, stay to the end, because this is very important. But both the R1 and the R5 Mark II will get a specialized, or I should say an updated, servo autofocus mode designed to assist sports photographers at capturing subjects behind nets. Well, there's lots of sports with nets. We have soccer, we have football, we have hockey. Although I think you're a little bit brave if you're standing behind the net in those. While you won't get hit with a puck, chances are you're going to have your nights locked out. Other sports such as badminton and volleyball as well, and it's going to give you precise focus in those challenging scenarios. I don't know what was more enjoyable, covering the R5 Mark II leading up to the announcement, trying to find all those leaks, and then finally, after building all that anticipation, pre-ordering the camera. And when I picked it up on August the 20th, I wasn't disappointed. I was really impressed with how fast the autofocus system was. It was just pretty incredible. Even with the same lenses I had before, it just seemed to be better, to be faster, to be more accurate, with the exception of shooting in the spring, again, when temperatures were a little bit colder. So I think you'll be very happy to understand that Canon's made some improvements to some really important features, especially for wildlife photographers. And if you're thinking I'm talking about pre-capture improvements or pre-capture shooting, then yes, it's true. So because we don't have the firmware update yet, I'm unable to look at the release notes, but what we're told is that the firmware update is going to have further customizations, and that's really good news. Give us greater control. And I think most likely where we're going to see that is we can pick how many seconds or how many shots, give us more control. And what I would like to see is us to be able to shoot a little bit, well, just give us, you know, a number of seconds, allow us to specify what we want. Obviously not going stupid to something like 10, 15, 20 seconds or anything like that. I mean, at 30 frames per second, that's just going to be a really, really bad idea. Now, there are some capabilities here that aren't going to be available in all cameras. So if you don't have pre-capture shooting right now in your camera, you're not going to have pre-capture added. If you do have pre-capture, well then this is one of those things that you can expect to see in the update. Now, coming to 5 Canon cameras, this update will enable exposure simulation. Oh, forgive me, folks. It's a little bit late at night here, and I'm just trying to get my head wrapped around things. I got an MRI in the morning, and I'm thinking about things non-camera related right now. But anyhow, where was I? Oh yeah, will enable, or what was I saying? Enable exposure simulation. Will enable exposure simulation when a flash is attached to the hot shoe, which Canon says provides accurate previews of lighting conditions for improved results. So that takes care of exposure simulation. There's another change that Canon's making to the R5 Mark II that could benefit a lot of people, me inclusive. I was in Vancouver for how many days? Was it about 8 days, 9 days? And 2 of those days were pretty much write-offs because of traveling. So I had 7 days, and in those 7 days, I managed to put 1.18 terabytes of 4K fine footage, as well as various stills, onto my CF Express card. That's the most I'd ever shot. And one thing I learned this time around is if in doubt, shoot it. And I was shooting a lot of whales, I was shooting a lot of orcas, I was shooting a lot of seals and other objects where you wanted to make sure you got it. The one thing that I didn't like about the pre-capture shooting is it doesn't work with log. I tried to shoot it, doesn't work with log. I hope that's one of the updates we get in this firmware update. But one thing you might not be aware of right now, but with the Canon EOS R5 Mark II, this port here, let me put my glasses on so I make sure I don't put the wrong card in here. Right now I have, I believe, a 2 terabyte card in here. It's a V4, so I can actually sustain a write speed, a transfer speed, a transcoding speed of 3.5 gigabytes per second, but I'm limited to 2 terabytes. Now for some, this isn't an issue, but for others, yeah, there are times where we blow through an awful lot of images and video. So with this firmware update, again, it's limited to cameras that have CF Express Type B card slot, so the R5 II, the R3, and the R1. Not sure about the R5 at this point, but Canon is now going to support up to 8 terabytes CF Express Type B. Now, it doesn't mention whether it's V3 or V4. It doesn't matter. I can honestly tell you from using these cards day in and day out, I have V3 and V4 cards. There is no way having a V4 card is going to enable you to shoot any faster with the R5 II or the R1, that it's going to allow the buffer to clear out any quicker. It's really, you might notice a frame or 2 per second. You're not going to notice it there. Where these V4 cards really, really benefit you, assuming that you have a V4 card reader as well, well, where that benefits you is in the ability to transcode on the card a whole lot faster or edit on the card faster, but mainly in actually transferring content off the card. You're basically going to be able to double the speed. So you don't need your camera to be certified for V4 or CF Express 4.0. they're backwards compatible. So if you have a V4 card, put it in your R5 II. When it goes to transferring content off, it's twice as fast. So I'm delaying a bit here. So the firmware update will give us up to 8 terabytes. That means they're changing from fat tables to probably, what's it called? I forgot. It's another one of those things, words forget me not. GPT tables, partition tables. I think I'm pretty close to it there. And I'll be able to test this out because right here I have a 4 terabyte CF Express card. I don't know if it's a V3 or V4. Let me take a look. That is a V3. I'm not surprised. The V4 ones have just come out. So finally, I've been having this for years. And what I've been doing is I've been using it in this Angelbird CF Express. I can't do two things at the same time and think properly. CF Express Type B V3 card reader. What I really like about it is you can actually turn any CF Express card into an SSD. You don't have any slowdowns. It accesses things just as quickly, and you can switch it out for another one. And this was very, very handy on vacation. So, well, it wasn't really vacation. It was a working vacation. It was work. But, you know, Vancouver, how could you go wrong, right? Just beautiful vistas, absolutely stunning. So I'll be able to test this out with the V4 card. And wow. So the question is, this is a skill testing question. I'm curious to see how you guys respond. With it now supporting a V4 card, I've got a V4 card that's a V3 or a new V4, what did I say? So I got a V3 4 terabyte card, or I have a V4 2 terabyte card. Which one should I put in my R5 II? I know what I'm going to do. You let me know what you think in the comment section down below. So that's pretty exciting. But now I want to get to the warning. What I notice is with firmware 1.1.3, I wouldn't be surprised if this is 1.2 for the R5 II. I found that there was an awful lot of strange autofocus issues. But again, this happened in March and mostly April, because I wasn't out shooting in March. There was nothing to really shoot. But in April, it was just really, really strange. I'd be out for an entire morning and I couldn't get the R5 II to actually lock onto focus. It would just kind of not freeze, because after about a minute, minute and a half, it would come back to life. The camera would function, but it would just, well, you know, like back when you were in high school and you just kind of, imagination would drift and you're just kind of in Never Land. That's what it felt like the R5 II was in. And if you're trying to shoot wildlife, that's not good. So I wished I could have gone back to 1.1.2 because I had a loaner camera while I was getting this one fixed because I damaged the LCD, top LCD. And what I noticed is I didn't have the same issues with that camera at the same time, the same days. And it happened multiple times, enough that I put a video out about it, that I reached out to Canon for support. But since the weather's turned warmer, I haven't had an issue. And again, I don't know why. I haven't updated the firmware since. So I'll be updating the firmware once it's available, but I caution you on applying the firmware right away. If you don't need these capabilities, wait. If you're suffering from bugs and issues, then certainly go ahead, because this firmware update also fixes various, well, bugs. We just don't know what those are right now. Wait a week, wait 2 weeks, see if there are any issues. You can reach out to me and I'll let you know, because I'm going to do another video. I'm going to apply the firmware update. Right after I get it, I'm going to do some shooting probably this weekend, and then I'll provide you an update, maybe Monday, maybe Sunday. I'm not sure when. I'm not going to make promises on my experience with the new firmware update. Just because you can roll back to existing firmware updates, but I talked to Canon, and they really don't advise it because you can risk bricking your camera. Not necessarily permanently, but you don't want to risk... You don't want to risk doing anything. Wait a week or two. Wait to see if anybody else is having any issues. Because look, 1.1.3, it took me a month to realize I was having issues. And it was only because what I was shooting in April was different from what I was shooting in March. Because in March, I had no issues. Really strange how that goes. Let me know what you think about this firmware update in the comment section down below. Now, in terms of OpenGate and a lot of those other capabilities that we heard rumored for the upcoming big firmware update, none of those are in this firmware update. But still, I like the fact that we can now support 4 terabyte CF Express Type B cards, V3 or V4. I like the fact that we've got improvements to the autofocus system. C2PA, that's also very handy. Exposure control, and of course pre-capture shooting, that's also a really nice one as well. If you have any questions for me, go ahead and drop them in the comment section down below. If you're looking at buying some cameras and you wish you had bought a few months ago when the prices were really, really good, before those tariffs really kicked in, at least if you're in the United States, well, I've got some good news for you. The R5 II is back down to $39.99. The EOS R5 Mark I is not as good as it was, but it's still down to around $3,000 to $3,200. The Nikon Z8 is on sale again. We're seeing many other cameras on sale. Sony's the only one that's being a little bit sneaky here. They raised the prices of the A7S III from its release price of around $3,500, $3,496, all the way up to $3,900, and now they're saying it's on sale by $300. Yeah, come on, Sony, it's a 5-year-old camera. I mean, Canon's R5, a 5-year-old camera, has been going down to as low as $2,700 and is currently right around $3,000. So, I don't know, Sony. But anyhow, thank you so much for watching this video to the very end. If you could please do me a favor, even if you're watching on TV, it only takes 2 seconds. Please go ahead and click that subscribe button. It means an awful lot to me, and it's greatly appreciated. But that's it for now. Have yourself a great day, a great weekend, and we'll see you again soon.